Well, first of all, thank you all for being here today. As you are all undoubtedly aware, we had a very dangerous situation last night here in the jail. Some windows were broken out again. And so I knew that you would all have a lot of questions, and I wanted to bring together the team of people who hopefully you can get all the answers that you need from. This is a very concerning and dangerous situation, of course, not only for the detainees, but for all of our personnel who work here, this creates a very a high-risk situation for them, and so we thank them for their work. And Dale will talk a little bit more about that. So I want to introduce the people who are here with me today, in case you don't know them. Dale Glass is the Commissioner of Corrections. Charlene Deacon is the Acting Public Safety Director, and of course Rich Bradley is the President of the Board of Public Service. So I appreciate you all being here, and I'm going to turn this over to Dale. Dale can talk a little bit about what happened last night and what's going on to ameliorate that situation. So thank you all. And Dale, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mary. So I'll begin by talking about the events from yesterday. And please understand that it's early on in our investigation, but I can give you information that we believe to be true at this point in time. So yesterday was a pretty normal day here until the events unfolded. We had no issues with the inmates, saw no problems. Well, visiting was going on yesterday. Inmates were having recreation. And so it was a pretty normal day. About 8:30, when my staff broke for lunch and stopped recreation, the event started to unfold. Inmates did gain access again to the windows and did bust them out. No staff were hurt. About 3 or 4 inmates cut themselves while breaking out glass. We were able to get them to medical, and no one required being placed in our medical unit or being sent out. We were able to take care of them on site, and they were fine. As Mayor mentioned, I'd just like to add that our staff stepped up, and even in this dangerous situation, did an excellent job. We even had people just show up when they saw things on the news before we could even contact them for help. Even supervisors were working line staff positions to try to help us get this under control. And again, as usual, the police and the sheriff came and helped my team try to get this issue under control. As I indicated, we did find a place to temporarily house the detainees that is secure and safe. And we'll continue our conversations about what's next in terms of their placement. I think it's safe to say that we're probably going to, again, look to MSI to help us house some of the inmates that were involved in this disturbance. The other thing that I would add, and it is, I don't know if it's a plea or what, but I probably stating the obvious. One of the things that concerns me in these kinds of situations is when the first events happened, we, the public, appeared to be condoning or justifying or lending cause for their behavior. And I'm not judgmental about that issue, but I would say it has a tendency to embolden. I'm not saying that was anybody's intent, but if the detainees or inmates see that this is the reaction, we have this support in this, what we did, it is not hard to imagine that it might occur again.
So Dale, at this point, how many inmates do we know got out of their cells, and how did they get out?
So we'll still be conducting an investigation about how many got out. The first thing that happened in this event and others is they cut the cameras, and we can't really see what's going on there. So I don't know if I'll ever be able to answer that question. I do know from what we've heard thus far, and again, this is ongoing investigation, is that not everybody in those units was involved in this event, and we believe that to be true, that the numbers were relatively small, but it was enough to create all the havoc that we had. We've heard that a lot of them just wish some of these people would stop.
But I mean, back in February, they got out because according to some reports, they would just put an obstruction of paper in the latch hole, and the latch would not engage and lock the jail doors. Was it some of those same techniques that were used, or do we have any clue as to how they got out? Because you've been working on this since the first time.
So I can't say specifically. I believe that that's a possibility that they were able to compromise the locks, but not everyone, just a few. And again, like I said, we're not finished with our investigation as it relates to that issue.
Are you asking for help, or what's the ratio of staff and prisoners? Are you calling out for help, or what do you need to?
Well, we're involved in hiring staff as we speak. In the last month or so, I'm sure we have hired and fully trained approximately or close to 20 people, and we probably have another 30 or so that we're in the process of hiring and doing the various steps that's required there, as including training. And we all, oh, I'm sorry.
What's the ratio of like staff versus inmates?
Well, the ratio can be misleading. I can tell you that for the division, we have somewhere around 390, 400 staff members. The population for the division varies just around 800 or a little under, plus another 75 or so that is in the building that we also provide security for. Some of the things that are true also about ratios is it's really about how many people are in that unit and how many officers are in that unit. The unit holds 66 people and is designed to have one officer, and we try to put two as often as we can.
Sir, were the inmates who were able to get out in cells that had been compromised, that were known to be compromised, and if so, should they have been in there?
So you say known to be compromised.
Well, it's my understanding that some of the floors had cells that could be gotten out of, and some didn't. Were these cells some of the ones that were known to be a problem?
No, they weren't known to us that they could be a problem. We knew the locks in general that people had found a way to compromise them. We did not know that they could be compromised. We checked all the locks after the event, which we do each time, and until this occurred, obviously they weren't doing that. So I don't know if I answered your question fully, but
So in a previous incident, February 6th, the locks were compromised. Did the Board of Aldermen set aside money to replace those locks so that that couldn't happen again? And was that money being spent, and were locks being replaced with more secure locks? Had that started, and if not, why not?
The first answer is yes. The board and the mayor's administration has approved money. They have begun that work. It's not completed.
Have literally begun that work?
Yes.
Okay.
Very, very much into that process. A lot of progress has been made.
What other recommendations have you taken action on since the task force has announced their list?
Well, I thought that might be a question, and I did jot down a few. I can tell you that when they met and were in the process, as we would get feedback, we began working on some of the issues. Some of the things that were said were obviously not true. Like, we weren't mistreating them. It wasn't cold. They were fed. They had clothes. They were being treated for COVID. I'll add that educated on, and we were providing recommendations that CDC had indicated. Even in the first picture with them breaking out the glass and looking out the window, you can see that they have PPE on. So we even taught them well to use that. So we continue with the testing. We identified 65 people that were high risk and got 30 of those that were willing to be vaccinated, and we have done so. And more recently, we provided the health department with 160 names that were willing to be vaccinated to hit that target date of April the 9th, where the governor has indicated that everybody is eligible. So we are looking forward to start that as well, and with the Johnson & Johnson, I do believe. Because I was concerned about when they get out, will they get their second shot? So I pushed for Johnson & Johnson, and the health director was successful. So that's one thing. There was some indication that they need more rec time. We went over that issue with the health department and our medical, and we increased the rec time. The only reason it was decreased was because of trying to be conscious of social distancing and things like that. We also reinitiated visiting. Last Monday was the first day of visiting. In fact, they were visits yesterday. So we did some spacing and limiting numbers of people that can visit, and it's slowly picking up people coming in to visit. Programs, we're trying to resume those. We were reaching out to volunteers to come in and start programming again. There was a requirement in task force recommendations that whoever provides those services be fully vaccinated. So we're trying to figure out how to figure that out and have them do that. We also, the recommendation about tablets, we've been working on that for some time, and people are already in the building pulling cables and doing all that. Our target date is May the 22nd to have those on board where they can actually do video visitation and some other things. That's just a few of the items that we're already doing, and there's several more, like the recommendation about hand-free sink in the kitchen. I'm not aware of a requirement like that, but we've already installed 3 downstairs and getting ready to install some at MSI as well, just to meet that
I
recommendation.
know you've all had a sleepless night, and so everything's kind of subdued, but the one thing that strikes me, I wonder, does anybody feel angry over this or ashamed that in the eyes of the nation, we look like Mayberry and Barney Fife was in charge of the jail? I mean, this is the second time that they outsmarted us. Is anybody outraged about that, or any kind of feeling like, how did this happen?
Angry? I don't know how that contributes to the task. Basically, this occurred, we addressed it, and we continue to try to improve upon the issue to try to ensure that it doesn't occur again. I guess it's safe to say the detainees can be resourceful if they want to do something, and we try to combat it. That's what corrections does 360 days a year, is try to combat whatever issues
Did
are brought.
somebody, if not you, did somebody mess up that this was allowed to happen again?
No.
How
Sheriff
can you
Betts
say-
said he was going to speak with the inmates this morning about their demands, which is why they backed away from the windows. Has he done so, and what has he learned?
I don't know, I haven't had a conversation regarding those issues with Sheriff Betts. I don't know what he intends or believes to be true. I do know, as I indicated, that the investigation is in its early stages, but the information that we're getting back were basically 2 things. One was more recreation. We had, prior to COVID, they spent little time in their cells prior to COVID. Now they spend a lot of time in their cells. They're still upset about that issue. The other issue that my staff brought back to me that was said by the detainees was they want to go to court. They want their issue resolved. But there was nothing that we did to cause them to react this way.
So
So
we
if I
talked
could
about
follow
the
up on
loss.
that, on Kevin's question, so there are detainees who are frustrated that their cases are delayed in St. Louis County's jail, in Jefferson County's jail, in Franklin County's jail, but they are not having inmates break out windows and start fires. So why is it happening here? And what has been done, what was not done after February 6th to allow another one to happen?
So I can't explain why detainees determined to do a certain thing. Rest assured, if research will probably bear this out, that this is not the only jail in the country that this has occurred during COVID. And so I won't speak to the county. I'm happy for them that they haven't had that issue. But the inmates or the detainees determine how they want to act out, and they do. I believe that once they felt like it was successful to to some extent or degree, it was likely that it would happen again. And in terms of the repairs, we are doing that. In the meantime, we have X number of inmates, X number of beds, and we must use them. Because, we have no control of who comes to the jail, when they're released, when they go to court. We just try to manage the issue.
To go back
Aaron,
to
at
the
the
locks,
post dispatch. Aaron,
yeah,
go
to
ahead.
go back to the locks, how many of the locks that you know can be manipulated have been replaced? And what is the date that you think they'll all have been replaced?
I'm not sure what the completion.
Rich, do you want to?
Rick, why don't you tell
Okay.
them it's not just about locks?
Mr. Glass, before you
Yes.
step away, could you just outline what has been done since the first event in February regarding repair work on these locks?
I think Mr. Bradley can also answer that. Thank you.
Good morning. So there are a substantial number of issues here. This is a 20-year-old facility. Like every 20-year-old facility, there are things that need to be done in order to bring it up to date. The issue, as you ask with the locks, is quite a bit more detailed than just the locks. There are frames, there are doors, there are glazing. There are a number of things that have to be replaced, and we are currently working in 2 areas of that facility. This facility, we started immediately after the last function. The next day, we started working on this. As you can imagine, you can't go to Lowe's and buy penal equipment or penal locks. All these things have to be made special order. We arranged to have factories open up the next day and start creating doors for us, start building locks for us, start putting the glazing together. So right now, the original project that we started is scheduled to be completed about mid-May, and the program is when that is turned back over, then the Commissioner of Corrections will see fit in how to populate that area. He will release the next area to us, and the next area, and the next area, and we will continue until we get all the doors, locks, glazing, and everything replaced. But as you know, it takes time and money to get these things done. Right now, it's critical as amount of time. We're doing everything we can as quick as we can to resolve the issue.
How do you prevent this from happening in the meantime again?
So we've met with corrections. We've met with our penal consultant, which is one of the best in the country. And we are talking about things that we need to do to, prevent this from happening again. Some of the things have been relocating inmates to our other facility up on Hall Street. Other things have been what we can do to minimize the inmates from, creating a problem. But in most cases, the simple answer here is we have to go through the proper engineering repairs in order to get the long-term solution. You could do something on a short-term basis that would not meet code, that would endanger the inmates, that would create all kind of problems, and we certainly are not going to do anything to endanger life safety. We're going to do things right and get it corrected once and for all to move forward.
We got
time for a few more.
The damage from the street is quite substantial. How is the facilities inside there? Is it safe for the inmates to habitate this area?
Yes, everything right now is safe for them, meets all the codes and criteria of everything we're supposed to do, and everything that we will do will meet all the codes and criteria. There's nothing that we will do that will put anybody in a life danger situation.
Is that around
Rick,
town?
tell them that they're not inmates in those.
Yes, there are not inmates currently within those areas. We can't do the work with them in there. The areas need to be vacated, and then we'll repopulate when the work's done.
Kayla, Public Radio.
Yes, right here. So you said that there's no inmates on the 3rd or 4th floor?
I did not say that. I said that, and the commissioner could answer that question better than me. I know currently we are working on 2 units on the 4th floor. Those are the 2 original units that were the problem back in February.
Okay. And is your intent to replace every lock?
Our approach is to replace every lock in every door that is a problem in this facility, yes, and control systems.
Do you have an estimate for how much that would cost?
Yes, the total of the project right now is estimated at about $13.5 million.
All right, so Mayor, one last question.
We're gonna do one last here, with Nick, and then Dana, we're gonna wrap it up.
Mayor, I have a question, if you don't mind. I think the bottom line is, people want to know, is anybody going to be held accountable for all this that's been happening?
You're talking about the detainees, you're talking about staff. I think what we are really very.
Anybody in charge, is anybody gonna pay the price for all this stuff that's happening?
The most important thing right now is for us to get these repairs done. The most important thing is for us to be able to secure the areas and have the detainees safely in these areas. We only get to look forward in this, and so that is what we're doing, and we began that months ago. And so right now, we're looking forward to be able to fix the situation.
Dana, last question.
There's been chatter online that jail staff is helping, or some jail staff are helping these inmates break free. What have you discovered, and what can you tell us about those rumors?
I am not aware of those rumors. It's on Twitter perhaps or something. So I'm not aware of that. I don't know if Dale, if you want to, I'll let Dale, they're his employees, so I'll let him talk about that.
So far, we're still investigating, but there's no indication whatsoever that any staff members were involved or aided in that occurrence, in any of them.
All right, last question. Mayor, we had a question from Russell, if you could address the backlog in cases in the 22nd Judicial Circuit.
Yeah, thank you.
In a report by the NPR station, the public defender has blamed the circuit attorney's office for some of those delays. Can you just speak to the delays and how that plays a role, and is somebody responsible for that?
Well, I mean, the criminal justice system is a complex one, from arrest to, final disposition of cases. We know that COVID has slowed down the courts, it's slowed down people working in offices. If you are a detainee, I'm fairly certain that has caused you a lot of stress and uncertainty about the disposition of your case. And so I would imagine that is very stressful for them. I did talk with the presiding judge, Judge Stelzer, this morning. They began on the 22nd of March, so 2 weeks ago, I think today. They have begun preparing for jury trials. They are also doing bench trials. They are also doing pleas. Now, of course, everyone is entitled to a jury trial, and so maybe you don't want a bench trial, maybe you don't want a plea. But the judges are working as hard as possible to move these cases because, of course, there is a backlog because of the COVID slowdown. And I'm confident that that's very difficult for detainees. And frankly, it's difficult for victims. And, we forget sometimes about victims, but there are victims of the of crimes who are also very interested in seeing resolution of some of these situations. So it isn't all about the detainees, it's about the detainees, it's about victims, it's about our employees. All of those groups are very important.
Mayor, could you comment on the Barney Five factor? Are you at all outraged to see?
Could I just ask you, I don't think that's very respectful, Kevin. And I love you, but that's not a respectful,
Well, somebody
reference.
screwed up. Somebody screwed
Well,
up.
certainly, who should be held accountable for that? First of all, the detainees.
What about the jailers who're supposed to be making sure the locks are good?
Sure, absolutely. And as everybody has said, working very difficult, very hard to get all of those replaced. I mean, there are for one of the units, this was 2 weeks ago, I think Rich sent me a bunch of pictures. The new doors are in, some were installed, some are standing there waiting to be installed. This is working at record pace here. So we need physical improvements to this jail, a lot of them. $13.5 million worth of them, we think, right now. And if you saw some of the recent information that I've put out, I put that money in, for example, the framework for what this new money, the stimulus money that's coming to the city would be spent. I mean, these things, we have to do this, and we have to find the money for it because this building is 20 years old and it needs improvements. It's got electronics. These locks are not padlocks. These locks are not, push button codes. This is an electronic system. So it's complicated. So I hope you don't take offense to me taking offense, but
Thanks everybody, we appreciate it.
thank you guys, appreciate it.